Hey, good evening, folks. Welcome to Taproot. I'm Todd Williams here with my cohort, Mr. Marshall Wilson, and we are glad that you are joining us. And we hope that we have an interesting show tonight. We always appreciate all of your willingness to take some time out of your day to watch and listen to us. So, Marshall, how are you this evening?
My foot hurts, but other than that, I am blessed beyond measure and way better than I ought to be. Um, as you know, I'm pretty beat up, and every now and then, different parts of my body rebel. After all, I put them through, 20 years in the infantry. But anyway, I'm pretty excited about a couple of things that are going on. For one, today I received an invitation from Miss Edelia Kaiser. I believe I pronounced that right. Might be Italia. I don't know, but I think it's Edelia Kaiser, who is the one of the two founders of Watchdog Family Protective Services in West Virginia. And these are people who are working with CPS, with the legislature, with citizens, basically trying to correct some of these grievous um, infringements upon the rights of kids and families by the government over the years. And I've met them before. I've spent time with them. They were very supportive of my campaign for governor in 24, and they've invited me to speak this coming Wednesday at the West Virginia State Capitol. And we're going to be there February 12th, next Wednesday, from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. out in front of the Capitol. And so I really hope the weather clears up by then. And we're going to be talking about this stuff. And I'm not the only speaker. I'm not even the main speaker, but I'm honored to be one of them. And they're going to have legislators. They're going to have legal experts. They're going to have all kinds of people out there. And I think that with our concern about um, our society's decline, uh, illegal immigration, illegal aliens in the country, they bring kids, and then, of course, child trafficking. A lot of people don't understand that that's all one issue. It's just different aspects of that same issue. You might say, well, if you've got a family down the road, they're not treating their kids right. Of course, they should be protected by the state. And I agree 100%. The state exists to secure individual people's natural rights. And the state should protect those children's rights if they are being abused. That shouldn't happen. But then if you have members of the family or members of the community who know the kids and want to look out for them, it seems that they don't get the fair shot that they should have at helping these kids out. So anyway, um, February 12th, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. at the West Virginia State Capitol building out front. I'm looking forward to that. The other thing that's pretty exciting that's happened recently, from my perspective, is that I ran for governor in 24 with the Constitution Party, which is a national party, nationally recognized party, and recognized in a preponderance of the states, but was not yet recognized in West Virginia. And as governor, I earned a gubernatorial candidate. I earned enough. My campaign earned enough votes to actually earn that ballot access in West Virginia, the state recognition as an active and valid political party. So pretty excited about that. We had our kind of organizational meeting on Sunday of this week. We called it our Winter Summit, and had some great speakers, including the chairman of the Constitution Party, the National Constitution Party, Justin McGill, our regional chairman, who I believe he's out of Pennsylvania, but he's basically got the eastern third of the country. His name is Bob Goodrich, old Army guy, principal of a private Christian school, wounded in combat, just a great guy. He was there and he spoke about the regional mission and how we're going to work together. And then our state chairman, Amy Stahl, who is, you meet this lady and you think, what a sweet lady, what a sweet lady. And then you find out she's got iron underneath, and she's strong and she's smart and she's decisive, which always seems to surprise people because she comes off as sweet, which is funny because, I'm the other way around. I come off as a jerk who wants to be in charge all the time, but I actually care. I'm a nice guy. Well, I wouldn't go that far. I'm not a nice guy, but I try to be a good man. So anyway, Amy spoke and she did a really good job. And then they asked me to talk about tactics, how to win elections, how to find candidates and put them in spots. And we started recruiting immediately. Um, and we have people who are signing up to be candidates in 2 years during the off-year election. Our entire House of Delegates, which is the state representatives, that's up for election every 2 years. Half of our state Senate is up every 2 years because it's a 4-year term. None of our constitutional officers are up because they all get elected the same year as the president. So the presidential election year is the big year for us. And then every 2 years we have these kind of, and people just forget about them. They just forget to show up. Well, the thing is, there are a lot of elections where the people who are in the seat just don't even have a challenger. They just keep getting elected because nobody shows up. Well, this time, somebody's going to show up. They're going to be a Constitution Party candidate, and we're going to teach them how to win, and we're going to give them support they need to actually win. And then, of course, in 28 for the next gubernatorial election, we're going to have a great candidate. It's not very likely to be me. It's going to be somebody who's a little easier to get along with, and we're going to have a great candidate. And our candidate is going to make a good showing, and we're going to start. We have already started laying the groundwork to make sure that our candidate has an opportunity to win. So I'm pretty excited about all of that. That was a big win. Todd, you were a huge part of that effort, making sure that my name was on the ballot as a candidate, and then making sure that people actually voted for me. And we had a lot of people who just normal folks. It's funny because I've had people contact me from all over the place. They're like, "How did you do this?" And they say, "Well, first of all, I didn't do it. A bunch of people." And they say, "Okay, well, where did you find the funds to hire these people?" I say, "None of them were paid. They're all volunteers."
Yep.
"Oh my God, how did you build a volunteer organization?" I said, "I didn't build it. I just put the word out. I just presented the message, and people walked up and said, 'Hey, I believe in what you're doing. I want to be a part of it. And here are the skills I can put in your hands.'" And I said, "Well, my hands are not skilled at knowing how to, please let me be the messenger and you guys figure out all this stuff." So we had a great team working on keeping track of the actual physical signature sheets, because the petitions to put my name on the ballot all had to be signed physically. They had to be pieces of paper. Couldn't do it online. Of course, you were our IT guy. You were responsible for the website, and we had a guy with the signature team who named Scott, who was responsible for all the data and making sure that the signature forms were legible. And he even went so far as to draw data from the voter rolls and staple a piece of paper to the back of each signature form that had the data for every single signature that was on that signature form, so that they couldn't say, "Oh, well, we couldn't make out who this was. Just flip the page. There it is." Amazing stuff. I mean, these are things I never, ever could have done. We had a great team, and I don't take credit or responsibility for any of it. All I did was say, "This is what I believe, and this is what I'll do. Give me a chance." So it's kind of neat. It's kind of neat to be a part of a team like that. And there are other people who are now asking, "How do we do what you did?" So we're going to be helping people figure that out. So those are the two things that have been going on with me, aside from my foot hurting a little bit right now. Also, I had the opportunity to go to the presidential inauguration. I think we talked about that last time. It was just cold. It was really cold, and they canceled the event that I was actually invited for. But I got to be there and got to enjoy meeting a lot of really great people who were there and who were really happy about what's going on.
Yeah.
What about you?
Speaking of what's going on, what a whirlwind. I mean, I would have never in a million years dreamed that so much stuff could happen in such a short period of time.
Honest to God, this is what I expected to happen in 21, not 21, 17.
Right.
And when I basically started preparing for the nation to fall apart, and for me to build, for us to build in West Virginia, a free, just, prosperous, and secure land that all good people could come to, and where we could secure our kids' natural rights, because I didn't expect the nation to survive. But here we are.
Yep. Well, I think, at least from my perspective, Trump's first term, he's not a politician. He didn't know what he was getting himself into. And he was just in a pit filled with vipers. And people backstabbed him. They put the wrong people in the wrong place. That's the way I felt, and I think that taught him a valuable lesson. So I think when he lost to Biden his second term, or what would have been his second term, I think he said right then, "Hey, I'm going to start assembling people and have the right people in the right places." And so we could go back to we've certainly talked about Pete Hegseth more than once, and I was glad to see him get confirmed. I think that he's a great guy, and I think he will.
Most of my veteran friends are excited. As a matter of fact, one told me today, we got one of our own in.
Yep.
Yeah,
right.
So that's kind of
right, and that's going back to what we've talked about so many times. Secretary of Defense. What's the standard for that? What's the the normal person that they would put in that position? They're going to put in some general, who's got all these shiny things on his chest saying how great he is, and not someone who's necessarily proven themselves on the field of battle. I mean, and has the respect of their peers.
Well, there's something people don't seem to understand about political appointments, is that they are political appointments. Mm-hmm. In other words, they're not positions that you earn by working your way up the ranks.
Right.
They are a position that you're offered because the guy who has a chance to offer them believes that you will uphold the principles in your organization that he wants for his administration. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people will hear that and they'll say, "Oh, so he kissed Trump's butt." That's not it at all. What's really going on here is you are now in charge of the executive branch of the federal government, and you want people who are going to do the things you want done in those branches within the law, according to the Constitution. But you have your agenda, you have your priorities, and that's what you expect to have happen. And the only way that's going to happen is if your political appointees are on board with you. Now, do they have some idea of their department? Do they need to have some idea of their department, its mission, its capabilities, its personnel, its philosophy? Yeah. They need to understand its culture, and they need to understand how to change it. But in addition to that, the people who are actually doing the work are the people that you and I might refer to as the deep state. They are the administrative state. They are the people who are deeply, deeply burrowed in there, and they think that they are the experts. And to a certain extent, on their position, on their task that they do every day, they are absolutely the expert. They're the one who knows how that task works. But so when I, as a commander, would go to one of my NCOs, and my NCOs were all my sergeants. My NCOs were all fantastic. Really knew what they were doing. I didn't go to them and say, "I want you to pick up this machine gun and go put it right there and then shoot 2/3 of." All of that's inherent in doing the job. He already knows how to do his job. What I would say is, cover this sector. This is your sector. You know the principles for establishing your sector. Make it happen. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that's the way it's supposed to work in all of these organizations. The political appointee is carrying the strategic vision, and strategic visions are closer to philosophy than they are to application. Don't get me wrong. They've got to be the bridge between philosophy and application, but they're closer to philosophy. So strategic vision, the appointee is the guy who walks into the organization and says, "We are now doing things this way. We're going to change our culture. We're going to change our focus. We're going to change our perspective to do things this way. Make sure that everything you do supports that vision, and build your capabilities to support that vision, change your operational parameters to support that vision." And they're all supposed to say, "Yes, sir," because in a constitutional republic, we all work for the people, and the people express their will by electing people. So if you don't like it, that's fine. That's okay. You don't have to like it. But if it's so morally repugnant to you that you can't be a part of it, you can do what I did, and you can get out because you can't be a part of what's going on. You can do what my wife did, which is to continue to serve honorably and then refuse to do the things that she considered to be morally repugnant while fighting to have them changed within the system.
Right.
but she didn't start a rebellion. I mean, she just said, they told her, you have to take this shot. And she said, absolutely do not. The law says, UCMJ, Uniform Code of Military Justice, says that you can't force me to take an untested medical treatment. You can't. And I'm not going to do it. And they made her life a living hell for over a year, and it was really hard on all of us.
Yep.
But that's how you do it. You don't just say, well, I'm not going to do my mission. If he says you got to shift your focus from what you're doing now to doing something slightly different, and you're going to do it in PACOM, Pacific Command, and they say, oh, no, I'm not doing it. Okay, well, that's fine. You don't have to do it, but go do something else because you don't work here anymore. If he says, look, I want all of my people to show up for work, and you say, no, I work from home. Well, no, actually, you don't anymore because, I'm the political appointee in charge of this department, and I just told you you don't. And these people honestly believe that they don't work for the administration, that they work for the next civil servant in their little hierarchy of, GS, SES, the general service, the executive service, or on up the line. They don't think that they work for the president.
Mm-hmm.
But see, that's our chain of command. You work for the president because he's the chief of the executive branch. And he's the chief of the executive branch because he works for the people who elected him, us, we the people. And of course, the response is, people say, well, I don't like our president, and I don't think that I should have. That's fine. That's okay. You don't have to like him. I haven't liked a couple of our presidents recently either. But you know what? Your options are do your job or go find another job. That's okay.
Right.
What you don't get to do is just stay there as a mole and impinge upon the will of the people as they expressed it by electing the guy and putting him in charge of your department. You don't get to do that. Anyway, I could go on forever about that.
No, that's good. So, going back to appointments again, so Hegseth was confirmed. And what do you think about the other people who are in the front right now, like Tulsi Gabbard and Bobby Kennedy?
I have personal concerns about each one of them, but frankly, what I'm really concerned about is this is the opportunity. This is the opportunity to execute our political counter-revolution, which will allow America to restore the republic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without a war. This is it. Now, I thought we lost that opportunity with Trump's first term. When he didn't produce the results that he's producing right now, I thought that's it. We lost this opportunity. It will never come again. And now we are descending into rage and ruin.
Right.
And he came back, and he came back with a vengeance. Now, I do not believe in governing via executive action. It should be legislative action because the legislature speaks for the people. They are our voice in the government. They're the deliberative branch, and they're the ones who are supposed to tell the executive branch how to do things. And I was a little leery when I sat there in DC after the inauguration, and the president walked out on the stage, and he had 200 executive orders he was going to sit there and sign in front of us. Mm-hmm. And I sat there and I waited and I listened, and I was able to, of course, look up some of them and see what they said. The first 87 were literally executive orders rescinding Biden's executive orders. That's great. No problem with that at all. But I listened to each one of the other ones, and I read each one of the other ones, and then went home and studied them. And each one of them was what an executive order should be. It mm-hmm. was the chief executive ordering the executive branch to execute the law under the Constitution according to this set of principles, according to this strategic vision. That's exactly what an executive order is supposed to be.
Right.
Now, what needs to happen is before the midterm election, little less than 2 years from now, before the House or the Senate flips, the House most likely, before that happens, they need to go ahead and get this stuff through Congress and actually codify the changes that he's made with his executive orders into law. This has to happen, and it has to happen within the next 2 sessions of Congress. Yep. And of course, what's really happening is you're leftist statist, whether they're Republican or Democrat, your leftist statist Congress members, both in the Senate and the House of Representatives, are doing everything they can to make sure that that never happens.
Right.
And of course, a big part of the way they're doing that is they're raising a big stink and saying, "Oh, he's a tyrant. He's imposing these things without going through the legislative process. Bring it to Congress, Mr. President." And of course, he is, and he should, and he needs to do it now so that it can be done. But the funny thing is they're bluffing, because they know that if it actually does go to Congress right now, it has a lot greater chance of passing this time around than it does after the next election. Because
Right.
I'm sure you know this, but historically speaking, the midterm election, the president comes in, he's got the House and the Senate. In the midterm election, he loses either the House or the Senate. That's the way it normally works. They need to get it done now.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And I think, like you said, the status doesn't matter which party they're from. They're throwing up every roadblock. And so it's really imperative to have a Speaker of the House who is on board with getting that stuff codified. And we've seen that at the state level and certainly at the federal level as well. So without a speaker who, gets the assignments, puts it where it needs to be, in what committees, and make sure that the committees are running the legislation and that it's getting out of committee and on the floor for a vote. All those things are crucial.
Right. So your comment about the speaker and how important he is, brings us back around to the actual answer to the question you asked me that started all of this. What do I think of all the other appointees? Dude, I can find problems with every single person. Sure. None of them does all the things I want to do. In fact, I argue with myself twice a day. So that's not the measure. The measure is whether or not they are on board currently, and if they will continue on board with what we intend for them to do. So Mr. Kennedy has said some things and done some things in the past that I don't agree with. Yep. Fortunately, from what I can tell, he will never be in charge of those things that I disagree with him on. Mm-hmm. That's like saying, well, Secretary Hegseth thinks that we should all have to drink raw milk. Okay, well, as DOD, he's Secretary of Defense. He's not in charge of raw milk, so don't worry about it. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
So you have to prior. Yeah. I think that's important. Our current speaker, he frustrates me senseless. Yep. But I think he's going to do his job, and if he does his job, then we have a good chance of actually getting these things these changes codified into law. And, if I can, I'd like to throw back to, why was Mike Johnson even possible as the speaker? Matt Gaetz, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, we removed a speaker and made Mike Johnson our speaker. If you remember, when I was a delegate, I actually made a motion to remove the Speaker of the House of Delegates. And of course, I was censured and made fun of and all this kind of stuff. And there was a well-known political reporter in West Virginia who called me and said, "Look, man, if you're going to strike the king, you need to kill him." I said, "You're not paying attention. You're not paying attention." 3 days later, the man announced that he wasn't even running for delegate, wasn't going to run for re-election. Mm-hmm. Like, no, he didn't get removed by the House of Delegates, but 3 days later, he announced that he was stepping down as the speaker and that he was not running for re-election as a delegate. So, these things have to happen. This is active and aggressive democracy, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So, I am more hopeful than I have been in 20 years now. 20 years ago, when I first started really paying attention, before that, I just kind of laughed at politics. I was like, oh, this is all just a bunch of silly people who know what they're talking about. And then after a war and, various other things that I was engaged in, it suddenly occurred to me that maybe I should be paying attention to these clowns, because they're making decisions that affect my children's lives. And that's how I got mixed up in all this stuff that I hate. A lot of other things I'd rather do. But an honest citizen who cares about his kids has to engage. Has to. You don't have any choice.
Yep.
Anyway.
Nope, that's exactly right. And I think a lot of people, I remember back when my dad was working at a plant here in Huntington, West Virginia, and he would carpool with a couple of other guys. And I remember talking about the school district because both of the guys he carpooled with lived in the same town that I grew up in, and they had already raised their children. And they would talk about maybe a tax levy or doing something to improve the school district or whatever. And those guys would both say, "Well, I don't have any kids going to school here anymore. What do I care?" And I'm like,
Right.
"Well, what if your kids have kids that go to school here, or what about your neighbor's kids, or you got to think about the bigger picture." So,
Yeah.
but you're right, and those midterm elections. I've talked to so many people here in West Virginia, and they're like, "Oh, I just voted in the big election." Okay, what
So you
about?
just your authority the rest of the time? Is that what you
Yeah,
do?
yep, exactly. And so many people that run unopposed. I mean, uh, yeah, they get in that position, and they, get themselves a good old boy network of people that they do favors for, and then they just don't even have any. People are like, "Well, why would you run against them?" Well, I can tell you several reasons. Okay, well, name one. Okay, and then you name a couple, and they're like, "Well, yeah, he's not perfect." I mean, and I'm like, "Okay, so no one's perfect, but maybe
Yeah,
we
but
can
he's
get."
got more chance to win than you do, right?
Yep,
How would you run against him? Okay, so
yep,
you worship power and principles. Got it.
yep,
That whole argument about this guy is more likely to win than this guy, as opposed to this guy needs to win. This guy is the right guy for the job, so we need to make him win. When you get into well, I'm just going to vote for the guy who's most likely to win, you are admitting that power is a higher priority than principle.
yep.
All right. So did you know that Chuck Schumer, the minority leader in the U.S. Senate,
Is a
senator from New York?
clown?
Oh, he is a nut. This guy, he's a dangerous statist. He actually posted on X. He said, "An unelected shadow government is conducting a hostile takeover of the federal government."
Yeah,
And of course, I was going to respond to him, and then I thought, what am I going to say that, I mean, that hasn't already been said? The comments are just nuts. But the thing is, it's amazing to me that this guy has the intestinal fortitude or is stupid enough or whatever it is to come out and say this when he has actually been a part of the shadow government for decades.
mm-hmm.
But it's just amazing. So of course the shadow government he's talking about is Doge.
Yeah,
And frankly, I think you're more qualified to talk about Doge and its capabilities and its history and the philosophy of Doge, and then the actual department established by Trump. You have a lot more information on that than I do. I just like to talk about the philosophical aspect here, that we the people elected a chief executive. That chief executive determined that the institutions in the executive branch were incapable of auditing and correcting themselves. He found people outside who are capable, and motivated to do it. And he basically deputized a bunch of citizens to do the job that you can't trust the government to do for itself,
right.
so that we can then correct our government's path. And hopefully, my hope is that all of this ends with us restoring the republic. And
Yeah,
so he sets all this up, and then Chuck Schumer has the chutzpah to go public and say, "Oh my God, there is now a shadow government."
oh
No, no,
yeah,
no. What is a small group of highly dedicated people coming from the outside targeting the shadow government that's been in place, that was in place by Woodrow Wilson and his ilk at the beginning of the 20th century.
right.
So just
But what do they always do? What do the statists, the Marxists, the communists always do? They're going to accuse the other side of doing what they're actually doing. I mean,
right,
that's straight
right.
out of Saul Alinsky.
It is.
So I see something that popped up here that I would like to note, and I have nothing against any religion. But I'm reading facts here. Looking at awarding agencies. and I don't see, it doesn't list here what they were awarded for, but I'm just going to say 2024 and 25, all of these fall within those 2 years. And this is something that's coming. I don't know if this is obviously probably not USAID because it's within the United States, and I don't know, is that money only going elsewhere, right? Typically,
Well,
don't know.
that's the intent. Now you understand that
Right,
the federal government, it should be mostly outward facing, almost
right,
completely, right? Um, there should be some interaction with the state governments, and there should be ways that the citizens can access their federal government. But the federal government is created to be an outward facing entity to represent us to the world. And
right,
the CA specifically is forbidden by law from working on U.S. territory against U.S. citizens,
right.
or at least they were before the Patriot Act.
Mm-hmm.
The federal government is forbidden from executing propaganda or information operations against the people of the United States. Okay, so what's actually going on? Did you see?
I mean, they control the media right now, so they're propagandizing everything. So anyway, I just
And
want to let me spit this out here really quick. So I see a list of amounts and the awarding
Mhm.
agency. So all of the awarding agency is from the Department of Health and Human Services. And for example, the state of Florida, $75,948,037 went to the Lutheran Services of Florida Incorporated. I see
Mhm.
$140,757,398 went to the Lutheran Immigration and Refugee Service in the state of Maryland. I mean,
Mhm.
what is that?
Well, I don't know if you're aware of this, but Pat McGeehan and Mike Folk and I went and talked to the Catholic diocese in Charleston and asked them why they were using taxpayer money to import illegal aliens into West Virginia. And next thing we knew, we were in a lot of trouble. Now, Pat actually led that effort, but I mean, this was 7, 8 years ago, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right? Something like that. It
That's probably
was
about
a
right.
while
Yeah.
back. This has been going on for a long time, and it's fascinating to me that the U.S. government is required to not engage in the establishment of a religion, and then the way that they interpret that is in the strongest way possible, that Christian entities can't be engaged in the government. And yet here they are giving hundreds of millions of dollars to so-called Christian entities,
Yep.
specifically for the purpose of bringing illegal aliens into the U.S., subverting U.S. law, subverting oversight by the people, by their elected representatives, and specifically for the purpose of doing this. And yet they don't have a problem giving hundreds of millions of dollars to churches to do that.
Yep. Well, what's interesting about this list is they list like Florida District 14, Illinois District 3, and someone else had made a comment on that, and they said, hey, you need to pull a list of all the representatives on the list and contact them and ask them, hey, what's going on with this?
Absolutely.
But
So
then,
go ahead.
no, I was just going to say, so the United States is probably the world leader in human trafficking. I mean, that's a sad fact to admit, but it's the truth. And
Yeah.
so, is the Lutheran Church trafficking people?
Yes, absolutely. So is the Catholic Church.
Yeah. So,
And
if they're doing God's work, but they're trafficking humans, those two things don't fit together.
right. And part of what's amazing to me is that when I will stand up against the government and say, disobey this order from the government because it is a false order, they don't have the authority to do it. I regularly have people, as a matter of fact, there was a senior ranking Republican delegate when I was in the House who actually called me into his office, put his big old Bible down on the desk in front of me and said, have you ever read that the Bible says that good Christians obey the government? And I said, have you ever read that the Bible says that, government officials who take bribes and destroy people's lives will be destroyed themselves by God Almighty? And he went, I said, don't ever use the Bible to tell me to commit injustice.
Yeah.
You're going to,
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
I'm thinking, so I think so many people, and that's most people are basing that on Romans 13. And
Yes,
I think so many people misinterpret that.
absolutely.
Give unto Caesar what's due to Caesar. I mean, it's a different context and a different time in history.
Yeah. So another branch of influence that has been funded by USAID, or should I say, that has been funded with money that they have taken at gunpoint from you and me and our other friends via USA and invested in these. Have you seen these discussions with Bill Kristol? You probably know who Bill Kristol is, but anyway, he's basically one of the Republican conservatives leading the fight against Trump. That dude's organization has received tens, even hundreds of millions of dollars through USAID.
Yep.
He's supposed to be a private citizen. He's supposed to be a think tanker. He's supposed to be, reporting on a person with principles who is standing up for what's right. And there was a time when I believed that he and I simply disagreed, but he was standing up for his principles. He was an honest man standing up for his principles. This dude's getting so much money, it's not even funny. So, when you and I see what's going on the surface and how, the entrenched government forces are doing everything they can to prevent anyone from actually being able to stand up for the principles of our government, of our republic. And then you understand that they are robbing you at gunpoint through taxation and various other forms of taking value out of your life, and then giving it to people specifically for the purpose of engaging in our elections in influence, election influence. This has got to end. This has got to end. The only way it's going to end is when people more like you than like me are able to find the data and put them into the hands of people who will do something with them.
Right.
I am not, I don't have the skill set required to do what this person who calls, I believe it's a lady, calls herself Data Republican, small r.
Small r.
You can look her up, you can look her up on X at Data Republican. And just the work she's doing is unbelievable.
Yep. Fantastic. And I'd seen a quote and I'd saved it because when you mentioned Bill Kristol, he actually spit out a tweet that says the deep state is far preferable to the Trump state.
Of course, he thinks so.
And then her reply was, hello, Mr. Kristol. For you, the deep state is preferable because you are listed as the president of Defending Democracy, EIN, blah, 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 which is an indirect beneficiary of USAID through the Rockefeller Philanthropy Advisors. You have been exposed.
There you go. That's exactly what I was talking about.
Yep.
Yeah. And just madness.
Yeah, it is.
And USAID is just kind of the keystone here. You've got to understand there are other boondoggles. I'm not even going to call them boondoggles. There are other money laundering operations going on in the U.S. government that are not part of USAID, but USAID is like it's the keystone, right? You remove that and the others start to topple after it. And I want you to understand that USAID is the clearinghouse for this sort of thing. And of course, they're only supposed to be operating overseas, and they're only supposed to be doing things that Congress has told them to do. But that's not what's happening. And these other, it's not just that there are other tax-funded aid agencies that are doing the same sort of thing. It's that the whole government works that way. The whole government works that way.
Yep.
You donate to and not just the government, but all of the institutions that maintain our government, like the election process. you donate to my campaign and I will then use that money to, you know, how a guy becomes Speaker of the House? He gets enough donations so he can help other people get elected because they say that they will vote for him for Speaker of the House. That's how you become Speaker of the House.
That's it.
Yeah. That is the entire ethic of our governmental system, not just the government itself, but the systems that actually feed into it, that, the election system, the media process. It's all about, you help me get to where I want to be and I'll give you a leg up and I'm on your side. So,
Right.
that goes back to if there's like an open seat in the legislature and the governor in West Virginia gets to appoint someone to that seat, then, he gets to extract promises from them in exchange. So normally the people supposedly elect the person they think will represent them. And if that person resigns or dies in office or whatever, the governor literally gets to install someone who has made promises to him to do what he wants them to do.
Right.
And if those promises are anything other than to support and defend the Constitution of the United States and of the state of West Virginia or whichever state against all enemies, foreign and domestic, it is corrupt. Even if the governor says, look, look, I understand that what I said a while ago about government appointees was that this is the way they're supposed to be. They're supposed to support the chief executive's policy, strategy, and vision. That's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm.
But the actual elected members, if someone is appointed to fill an elected role, that's not the mechanism you use. The mechanism you use is will you represent the people of your district?
Right.
And of course, that's not the way it works.
Well, and then even beyond the government entities that are corrupt, those then go on to create a web of deception and corruption in other things that aren't even related to government. For example, I follow someone on X that's like they're like Nancy Pelosi's investment tracker. And so they track all of her investments. And what's interesting is they've created a bot that follows her investments and then spits it out to the public. And there's like people who have been investing the way she invests, in standard, like in a 401k, you're going to look at about a 10 to 12, maybe a good year, 15% return on your investment. Nancy Pelosi's like at 40%. So, not even in the same ballpark. And so, how do you make investment picks that are like better than Warren Buffett? How does that happen?
It's got to be inside information. You got to have information that other people don't have access to.
That's right. That's how you go from having a net worth of, $500,000 when you get elected and you serve one term as a senator and now you're worth $7 million.
Right. And it just continues to grow.
Yep.
Yep.
And then you can use that money to influence other people to get reelected to,
That's what
and it's both sides. It's not just a one party issue. It's, Mitch McConnell, who's terrible. I remember reading about him, like when he first started, he didn't have any money. And he's married to a Chinese lady whose parents own one of the largest container shipping companies in the world. And, in the beginning, he was what is it?
You know how you become wealthy in the People's Republic of China? The Chinese Communist Party makes you wealthy.
That's right.
You have to be one of their buddies to do that.
Yep. Just like with their athletes, anyone that they're going to use like basically as a poster child for the Communist Party. But Mitch was against, he wasn't pro-China early in his career. And then after he met that lady and they got married, he did a flip completely on that and they started pouring money into his campaign. And here we are, I don't know how many years he's been in there, 40 some.
Do you suppose it's because of her just genuine natural allure? Or
to the turtle? Maybe she just thinks turtles are cute.
I think maybe it was the money that changed his mind.
Oh,
So
you're
here's
talking,
something
yeah.
that the changes that Trump's making currently, this one really got my attention. And I think it's one of those that most people would kind of miss, not because people are stupid, just because they're not that engaged with the government, and you got other things to worry about. You got a shop, you got to run, you're a mechanic and you got to work all day and you don't have time to look into this stuff. But this is something I've spent a lot of time looking at. It's very important to me. The United States of America has withdrawn from the United Nations Human Rights Council. You have to understand how huge that is. You have to understand how the United Nations functions, what its intended purpose is, what it actually does, and then its structure. And the thing is, there are permanent members, and then there are members who rotate through the different committees and stuff like that. U.S., China, Russia, we're all permanent members. To say, I don't want to be a member of your little party anymore is huge. And of course, he actually referenced the fact that a lot of the people who are on the human rights, I think it's actually being led right now by Saudi Arabia, if I'm not completely mistaken. But, basically President Trump is saying, you guys don't have any authority to tell us how to secure the natural rights, the civil rights of our people, because you're freaking throwing people off buildings for being gay. You don't get to preach at us. It's a big thing. Not only that, but he shut down what is it? United Nations Relief and Works Agency funding. We're the primary funding mechanism for all of this stuff. You, the American taxpayer, are funding all of this stuff. And we talked about USAID, kind of skimmed over the surface of it. That is a huge monstrosity. USAID is Cthulhu. I mean, if you know what Cthulhu is, that's what it is. Well, and I mentioned that other parts of the government and government adjacent things operate along the same principles. The Relief and Works Agency of the UN is the same thing, right? It's just like USAID. And when you cut U.S. funding from UN Relief Works Agency, they're pretty much going to fold, because it's used as a policy tool. It's not actually there to help people. You have to understand that no government is just nice to people. When our government feeds people in the United States, it's not because they love them. When our government goes to foreign countries and gives them millions of dollars worth of condoms, it's not because they love them. When they teach them how to stop the spread of AIDS, it's not because they love them. As a matter of fact, I actually found a couple of agencies that were established specifically to start a rebellion in Haiti, and they were hidden as AIDS relief works. Guys, the government is not an effective method for charity. The government is the wrong tool to use for that. Yeah. And what we need to do is shut down all government charities, take them all out of the hands of the government, and then allow we the people, our churches, our synagogues, our mosques, our community organizations, if we want to conduct societal change, we want to reach out to people, we have the right to do that. But when somebody shows up and gives you a lot of money, keep in mind, I was a missionary in the Peruvian Amazon, right? And I did a lot of social sort of support for people. I spent a lot of money on people and things like that and helped out. But I made it very clear that I was going to do that whether they showed up at my preaching service later or not. But don't ever forget that I was there to teach people about Jesus. I was not there to feed people, to take them to the doctor and get their medical needs taken care of. Now, Jesus said, do not ever give people the gospel and say, be happy now, be warm, be fed. Right. You feed them, you give what they need to be warm. But I'm trying to say that those two things are always together, the ideology and the gift. The gift does not come without the ideology. So what I'm saying is they're taking money from you at gunpoint, using that money to go to other places to specifically sell an ideology to these people with what they call charity. It's not charity. They're actually imposing their will on people using economic force, making war on them, economic war on them in your name, but making them, but the ideology they're enforcing on them is an ideology that you and I and other people like us have rejected out of hand.
Yep.
Amazing. amazing that we've allowed this to happen to us. And we have this one chance to extract ourselves from this maelstrom and actually restore the republic. It's not going to happen again. So we got to make it happen. So you asked me what I thought of the appointees. I could sit here and nitpick each one of them forever. I really could. But the thing is, I believe that they are dedicated to this process of restoring the republic. They are dedicated to extracting us from this government control of every aspect of our lives. They are not. They are reaching to the root issues. And we could talk about the surface issues, even the moderately deep issues all day long. But these guys are taking an axe to the root of the tree.
Yep.
I'm all for it.
Can't chop at the branches.
Well, you can't trim the limbs and then say, hey, we took care of business, which is exactly what our government's been doing for a century.
Yep.
You gotta root this thing out. You gotta go to the taproot, Todd. You
That's
gotta
right.
remove the root of this corruption. And that's what they're doing. So yeah, I support them. I support them wholeheartedly. Now I'm keeping an eye on them because I'm a citizen, and that's what we're supposed to do. We're never supposed to just throw it into the air and let somebody else run with it. We need to keep an eye on it.
Well, that's right. And so many times the government has, given us, told us that they're going to do good things, and then come to find out they start off doing good things, but then they turn it into not good things, and no one's watching them. They're not held accountable.
What's the Latin phrase? Who's watching the watchers?
Oh yeah. You just, I saw you post that or something the other day, I think. You were talking about propaganda earlier, and I'm sure you've already seen this too, but Politico.
Yep.
Over $8 million. Polio.
Wholly owned by USAID. It's a wholly owned subsidiary of USAID.
Yeah.
It is a government propaganda operation. I've said it for years, and people are just like, no, they just don't say what you like and you get mad at them. Nope. Wholly owned. I just didn't have the data to back up my claim because I know people. I've seen them. I've talked with them. And yet I don't have the data. I don't have a recording of them saying that like James O'Keefe does. And I don't have the data like data scientists are capable of sniffing out. And so I just look like an idiot when I say these things, but here it is. It's a fact.
Here it is. And I've seen so many people that say, okay, so tax money going into USAID funding Politico, which I absolutely do not agree with anything that they're saying. So in effect, I am bankrolling a propaganda machine that is against me. Why should I pay taxes? So now we're back to taxation without representation.
What if I told you that public broadcasting has been doing the same thing for
PBS? Oh, they're so good. PBS, they want what's good for the people.
They play nice music, and have you heard the way they talk?
Oh yeah,
just so intelligent.
Yes, absolutely.
When I was in the House of Delegates, it came before us. We were doing the budget, and of course, we had a shortfall, and we had a specific meeting with some of the legislators who seemed like they wouldn't vote in favor of funding PBS. And some of the PBS representatives, and they came in, and this very nice young lady walked over to me and she says, hey, Delegate Wilson, I understand, your principles and all that, but come on, what are we going to do without public broadcasting? I said, what is it you say at the end of each program in public broadcasting? Brought to you by, she said, well, we name who it's brought to you by. I said, the MacArthur Foundation. She goes, you do listen to public broadcasting. I said, I do. I really liked Click and Clack. I enjoyed those guys. They were hilarious. But here's the thing. You never said by taxpayers who were being robbed by the government. Why don't you want to admit that? She said, well, not all of it. I said, not all of it. Does all of it come from the MacArthur Foundation? She said, no. I said, you always mention them. Why did they get mentioned? But I don't as a taxpayer. She said, well, we often say, and by people like you. I said, do you mean via your tax dollars or do you mean by donations? She goes, well, donations, of course. I said, you have no right to send armed goons to my house to take money from me and my family and then use it to tell lies about us.
Yep.
Well, that's a really interesting way to characterize us. And I said, have you listened to the way you characterize me? Meaning people like me who believe what I believe.
Yep.
She said, so we're not going to get a yes vote from you. I said, no, you're not. Defund those clowns.
So I'm going to change pace here real quick in just the few minutes that we have left, and I'm going to ask you, what do you think about Israel, Gaza, and Netanyahu?
I think that Israel, like every other sovereign people, have a right to live. They have a right to defend themselves. I think that the U.S. should recognize that and get out of their way. If they are our allies, which we seem to believe they are, and I don't have an argument with that, we need to support them. Does that mean my children need to go over to Israel and die? No. There are ways to support our allies. There are diplomatic ways. There are financial ways. I don't necessarily think we need to send them a bunch of our money. But it's weird to me that we were deeply involved in Ukraine and, of course, all the background of that. And yet we're apparently punishing our allies in the Middle East because they're defending themselves by a sneak attack where a bunch of kids were murdered at a music festival. Frankly, if I'm the king of my little domain and somebody sneaks in and kills a bunch of kids, I will wipe them out to the 10th generation. I will destroy their homes. I will salt the earth. I will kill all of their animals. I will make sure that no remembrance of them is ever made, except that their name will become a curse. So,
I always knew when you told me you like jumping out of airplanes and shooting people in the face, you were telling me the truth.
It was a fact. Now, of course, I realized that when I put myself in that position, I might get shot in the face myself. But that's the way it works.
That's part of it.
Yeah, but I absolutely believe that the government exists. All governments exist for the purpose of securing the natural rights of their citizens. Now, most of them don't do that. Most of them don't even try. But the government of Israel has the right, has the authority, has the sovereign authority to do what is necessary to defend their people and defend their land. I really don't see why there's any argument about that at all. The only argument should be, what's our involvement in that? And frankly, I think that our involvement should be recognizing their right, speaking clearly and publicly about their right, and then supporting them in whatever ways we can that, give moral support. They should have enough money to buy the arms and weaponry they need, open up our markets to them, let them buy what they need, let them take care of business.
Yep.
Now, if Israel were to, invade France tomorrow, we'd have to have that discussion. That would be a different discussion. But this time they were invaded and they have a right to defend themselves.
Right.
I don't expect Israel to invade France anytime soon.
No. I see this thing just popped up. It says the plot thickens. So Michael Schellenberger, says that the USAID and the CIA reportedly had ties to Donald Trump's impeachment.
Of course they did. Of course they did. This was all an operation. It was all an information operation meant to influence the elections.
So I wonder, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Which means that it's illegal. It's illegal because they're not supposed to operate on U.S. territory, U.S. soil, and they're not supposed to operate against U.S. citizens.
Right.
It's illegal because they're not supposed to work together, and it's illegal because they interfered in the elections. So they should be dragged out of their offices and put on tribunal. They should be held accountable. I mean, if 100%. I did stuff like this, we know people who went to prison for walking into a government building. Walking in. I was standing outside and nobody's knocked on my door yet, but who knows? Maybe one day they will. The idea that, and my post on January 7th on Facebook, on January 7th, 2021, says, here's what I observed, but here's the upshot, folks. There are two different ways to attack an institution. You can corrupt it from within, you can try to destroy it from without. But when you are being oppressed by an institution that has already been corrupted from within, the people who have corrupted it from within are wrong to defend it.
Yep.
Read the Declaration of Independence. It's all right there. It's all there. It's all in Plato. What do they teach in these schools? Anyway,
Absolutely.
I appreciate you. Always love hanging out with you. Thanks for putting up with me. And GCD Network, thank you for giving us this opportunity. We appreciate y'all and all you do. And to our friends out there who are watching, God bless you. Thank you very much. Stand fast. I'll meet you on the high ground.
Absolutely. Thank you for hanging out with me. I always enjoy it as well. And this has been a great topics of conversation we've covered this evening. So that's great. Thanks, folks. Thanks, GCD. We hope that you'll tune in with us next week.